is Locked on Jazz for the 1st of December. It's a happy hat day. Jazz win. Everyone can relax. The Collin Sexton experience is one I've never experienced ever before, and I'm buying in entirely in the whole experience. All and every aspect of it. A zone defense from the Utah Jazz changes the game. A change in rotation, subtle but maybe important, and some late game watching. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan. It is also Happy Hat Day. We are back on the winning track. Everyone's happy, though frankly, we'll discuss that in a second. But thank you very much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available on all podcasting apps and as well as YouTube. And thank you very much for all those who send the Spotify raps. It's pretty cool to see. Frankly, I'm pretty blown away by the loyalty and consistency that some of you have listening to this program on a daily basis. So thank you so very much for doing so. It is greatly appreciated and a bit honored. Sorry, our regular graphics package just didn't work for some reason today. I'm not entirely sure why. So hopefully you can still hear me and see me if you're watching it and it's still working for you. But the regular big graphics package with all the layout didn't click in. So first thing is just a really solid win. And though I would say, I think the schedule gave them one, right? The Clippers played the night before. The Clippers were playing without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and and Norman Powell, who was kind of the impetus that had won them their previous games when they were without those guys. And there was a fourth player, Luke Kennard, who's really good. But actually, it's like a really consistent performance to what we've seen in all the games previously. And maybe this is the most encouraging thing to me. I don't think that performance was actually dramatically different than what we've seen in the 5-game losses. The energy, the heart, the consistency, the fire of this team has been pretty similar in every game all season long. In fact, there was a play last night where I thought one of our guys didn't hustle. Now, I think he might have been nicked up a little bit, but he literally just didn't hustle, didn't get back defensively. It was the first time I'd seen that all season long. I mentioned on the air because I thought it was noteworthy that we just haven't seen it at all. And a great, incredible tribute to this team. And so I thought last night's performance, I'm a little cautious to have this great different emotion and Happy Hat Day and all that kind of stuff. It might have been just because my hair looked ridiculous. Because they won. I think, people like to win and wins feel good. But from a standpoint of what this team does, their signatures, the heart and the effort and the tenacity and the togetherness they play with every single night, that did not wane in any way during the 5-game losing streak. And so I'm a little reluctant to then overplay the excitement of a win just because, frankly, maybe the opponent wasn't as good tonight. Terrence Mann, Marcus Morris Sr., Ivica Zubac, Amir Coffey, and Reggie Jackson's not a great team. They have found a way to win games impressively, but that's not a tremendous bunch to go beat on the back end of a back-to-back. It's what won the game is just all the same characteristics that are the signature of the Jazz. I mean, it's a really good, solid win, but I've seen really, really good, solid losses too, I guess is my point. So not trying to diminish it, I think it's important. What's really important is for the guys that what I said during the second quarter is when you're in a 5-game losing streak and the game starts to slip away from you, it's really hard to see how you react. And they reacted beautifully. They came out in the third quarter, throttled them. When the beginning of the fourth quarter got a little wobbly, they came back out and throttled them again. So that's the coolest part about last night to me, is it's a solid win. But it's the same solid performance we've seen out of this group. That's why you should love this group. They just play with this energy and tenacity each and every night. The most symbolic player on this roster is Collin Sexton. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. The Collin Sexton experience, which is truly what it is an experience, has been a difficult one for me to grasp. I have, my own personal bias about what I like and how I like the game to be played. That That is not in Collin Sexton's like DNA to play the game necessarily in that fashion. And he misses reads and does, he just does stuff that, like, if, all of us have our, right? Some of us like Thai food and some of us like Chinese food and some of us like Italian food, and players are no different. And like, I think he's a wonderful dude. He's like uplifting and he's fun to be around. Like, this isn't personal in any way, shape, or form. The way he plays and some of the things he does on the floor are often, I find, maddening. I'm going the other way because he plays with such unbridled positive intention in how he plays the game. It's one thing if his inability to make a read at times, or to get other guys involved at times, or make the right defensive play. I mean, he can give a bona fide great player, like, suddenly a stunning amount of space, right? And you're like, whoa, what's going on? These things never, ever, ever are done with anything other than the greatest intentions of success. And that is maybe the coolest part about Collin Sexton, is that the guy really wants he's desperate to win, plays with maximum heart. And I thought he changed the game last night when he came out and just battled to open up the third quarter with great defensive intensity. Sorry, I was looking up a date. I thought he came out and just, put out remarkable effort, got into it defensively, probably a little like overzealous. Fine. That's the essence of Collin Sexton. Overzealous is the essence of Collin Sexton. And I've decided I'm all in for it. Like, it's incredible to watch. First of all, his boundless energy. Second, his endless competitiveness. Third, his actual skill set, which includes driving to the basket with immense power and strength and getting the basket. And his first step is ridiculously good. Like, ridiculously good. Is terrific. When you isolate his individual numbers since Mike Conley's got out, he's been just terrific. Now, are there, again, I called it on the air, I called him like this beautiful piece of marble that still had jagged edges and could cut you and was a bit rocky, and we're trying to polish it into this final beautiful art piece. And it has all of the pieces to be a remarkable, beautiful art piece. Now, it might not. It might not just be in Collin's DNA to ever make elite level reads and stay at that level of focus for 32 minutes a night. And those might not be congruent with that of this unbound energy and relentless competitiveness. Those two just might not go together. And that's a little bit of my point here, is I'm just going to embrace this because it's pretty awesome. It is the Jimi Hendrix Collin Sexton experience. There's no other way to look at it. His individual drive game is through the roof right now. He and Jordan both, actually. In the 6 games since Mike's been gone, since November 20th, Collin's averaging 1.27 points per drive. I've got to bet it's close to one of the top guys in the league. That's a really high level, 1.27. Clarkson's 1.20. I mean, this is how we're surviving offensively. And really playing. And his drive game is if he's on the dribble, has room on the drive to get going, you're going to have a hard time stopping him. Now, again, the underhand scoop to Walker Kessler and his kneecaps with no room in the middle of the key, not a great idea. Not a great idea. But fine. Because I'm just going to embrace all of it and love all of it because of where it's coming from. And it's coming from the purest, most awesome spot. The story about Collin where Alabama gets a bunch of guys foul out and ejected and injured, and next thing you know, they're going 3-on-5, and Collin brings them back into the game. Fits perfectly. Fits absolutely perfectly to everything about him. And in some ways, maybe the perfect game for him at times because there was no teammates. It just had to do with competitiveness and zest and energy, and he's amazing. But he's also really, really skilled offensively. Like he's really, really, really skilled. His pick and roll game is actually, which was somewhat of a mess to start the year, has been really good in the last 6 games too. He's at 1.14 points per pick and roll. And again, he and Jordan have both been good. He's been really good. So we're seeing growth before our eyes. I think his reads the last 3 games have been better than ever before. They're working with him with these strobing glasses that he works with to make quick decisions. And then there are just plenty of possessions where he brings the ball up and cannot get off it to start the possession. So I just wanted to announce this, that I'm all in. I love it. I think it's actually somewhat emblematic of this entire team, that it's got flaws and it's not perfect and it's not ready and it has boundless energy and it plays beautifully and it plays with the right intentions, and we probably should love it for every second of what it brings to the table. And that's where I am with Collin Sexton right now. I just think it's a wonderful experience, the Collin Sexton experience. And I'm going to fully embrace it and then enjoy every step of his development, because he's just comes with such a remarkable skill set, and he's just going to get better and better and better. So that's where I just, it's a little fun open. Hope that makes sense to everyone. And it'll be fun to watch. It's going to take some time. I've got him for a little while, and he keeps improving. So it's going to get even better to see. Today's show, a Thursday edition of Locked On Jazz. Thanks very much for tuning in today. We do appreciate you. And as I said earlier, those of you with the Spotify Wraps, some of those numbers are just completely mind-blowing, and I could not be more appreciative of that. Today, feel free to send it, please. I'll retweet it. I want to see it. They make my day. If you're wondering if you're going to get in, absolutely. It's honestly, it's like, it's data. It's like there's no hiding it. It's like the most rewarding thing to see out there. Today's show is brought to you by my good friends over at Summit Capital. Summit Capital is a Utah County investment group who is made up of successful business operators. Dave and Matt and Jeff are the guys that I've gotten to know over there. They're looking to provide capital for management seeking to buy out the owner of the business they work in. So think about someone works in a company, family owned usually is probably what we're talking about. Family's been there for a long time. There's next steps to be made. Why is family going to take the risk? Things are good. But as management, you know where you could take this company to even greater heights. So Summit Cap comes in, provides the equity for you and the money, and you buy out the owner, they win, and you take the company for a new level, and you take Summit Cap on the ride. I can tell you from personal experience, they invested in Locked On. They were terrific. They asked great questions and never got in the way. Like, what else could you ask for? Never had an artificial timeline to get out. They invest for the long term. They invest in all types of structures, both debt and equity. They're good people. It's Matt, it's David, it's Jeff. Reach Matt at 801-796-2033. That's 801-796-2033. Or you can email LockedOnJazz at summitcaputah.com. That's LockedOnJazz at summitcaputah.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Bet Online. Bet Online, where the game starts. They do great work, fun stuff over at Bet Online. I need to check the lines more often because there's always like that play at the end of every night where you're like, I wonder whether that just swung things. We got a little Thursday night football action tonight. The Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots. Actually a pretty important game. Too bad it's played on Thursday because Thursday games are bad because it's inhumane to ask players to play that soon. Bills are a 3.5-point favorite in that. There's only one NBA game tonight. Dallas and Luka go up against Detroit. They're an 8-point favorite in that. NBA Futures Championship odds. Boston's beginning to be the odds-on favorite. Plus 400. Milwaukee's plus 550. Phoenix and Golden State are now the West favorites. Golden State at plus 750. Phoenix at plus 800. The Clippers, who we saw last night, at plus 1,000. And then Brooklyn is still 6th overall at plus 1,600. But we're beginning to thin it out a little bit. The regular season win totals, they keep adjusting to them ever so slightly. The Jazz over-under on wins is now 41.5. That's all over at our friends at betonline.net for the odds, news, scores, and the latest. It's all at BetOnline. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and we are available on all podcasting apps, and we are also available on YouTube. Thanks for joining in on that. Make your second listen today. Locked On Sports Today, your 22-minute rundown of all things in the sports world available for you. Some zone defense last night by the Jazz. Jazz played about 30-plus possessions, I would guess, in zone last night, which is a lot. The most they've played maybe ever, frankly. Maybe not just like this season. I don't remember a team that's played that much zone. What's interesting about what Will Hardy did with the zone, which I really, really liked, is the fact that he had Lauri Markkanen and Jared Vanderbilt at the front of the zone. And that made an impact and changed it. I think, you can do a lot of things with the zone, but when the Jazz played zone last year and you would have Mike Conley and you would have Donovan Mitchell each at 6'1" in the front of the zone, it didn't feel like that was going to be very successful at all. And instead, last night, what you saw with the zone, first I thought you saw the Jazz fly around. So that's the key to a zone. And the second thing was that you had this kind of front line that they played around with. At times it was Markkanen and a guard. Times it was Vanderbilt and Markkanen. I like the idea, though, in a day and age where the three-point line is really one of the most important things you want to protect. The idea that you go into a zone with small guards seems really backwards. So the idea that you go into the zone and have big guys up front who can get out and take away shooting windows makes a lot of sense to me. So it was really interesting to see. And I think we'll see how much they do it in the past. They did it. He dropped it Udoka Kessler zone for a few possessions before we went to San Francisco for that game, and it didn't work. And then they practiced it again in San Francisco. Didn't use it for that night and practiced it a few more times, and then we finally saw it last night. So that I thought was really interesting to see. And it's, for a team that's 29th in the league defensively and 30th in the league in defensive rebounding or 30th in the league in rebounding, vice versa, over the last 5 games, the reason you get worried about a zone is whether or not you can rebound. Well, we weren't particularly rebounding. So I don't know what our rebounding was in the 30 possessions in which we were in the zone, but it didn't seem to be a problem. It will be if they play that style where the bigs are up top, they're going to have to really crash. But they have to do that anyway, frankly. And maybe it forces some of the guards to do a good job. The defensive rebounding on both sides last night was poor. I think the Clippers got 34% of their offensive rebounds, which is really high. The Jazz got 38%, which is like 90th percentile. So neither team did a very good job of the defensive glass last night. What the Jazz did last night is really the Clippers didn't make shots. The Jazz did a wonderful job of denying the rim. The Clippers only got to the rim 19 times. They only went 8 of 19 at the rim. Which leads to kind of my second thing I noticed last night, and it's subtle, but Walker Kessler came in about 2 minutes earlier than usual. Walker Kessler had been coming in at the 4-minute mark most of the time recently. Like if you wanted to look at it, he was at about the 4-minute mark of most games. Last night, he came in at the 6:13 mark and the 7:10 mark. I think there's something here. Few reasons. One, Walker's good. Okay, so let's start there. Walker's good. And I think Walker is only going to get better. He seems to be super hard on himself, which, I think you have to hope he doesn't beat himself up. You see him last night hitting the floor and things, and it's super, super hard. The NBA is crazy hard, particularly for young bigs. You just don't see young bigs impact the league very much. He is impacting the league. He's doing some fabulous stuff. I think he's like 5th in the league in block shots right now. And I think most teams, I don't want to overplay this, but I think most teams play kind of a traditional center to start and then go smaller as the night goes on. So the more time Kessler can get against a starting big early in games, the better. That's my feeling on it. The more time he can get in early games against starting bigs, the better. 1, he learns. 2, it's better for us. It's not great when he's on the floor with 5 wings, which a lot of teams' second unit is becoming because there's just not enough centers. And so I think that's like, let's keep an eye on that. It's just a subtle little move. Vando might be better the other way around. Vando's defensive numbers are not great. I don't know why, but the Jazz defense with Collin Sexton and Jared Vanderbilt on the floor, the numbers are noticeable enough that it's actually probably worth commenting on. And I think that's I think just a subtle little move there by Will Hardy to keep an eye on. And these are the things that Will's done a very good job on. Third one I wanted to touch on was Lauri Markkanen's first half versus second half game. So in the last few games, Lauri has been really, really active early and then really quiet. The first thing I think that's going on where we're all off a little bit here is when we say Lauri is really quiet. I think we forget, despite the fact that at halftime last night, Lauri Markkanen has 15 points and was loud. He'd only taken 6 shots. He went to the line 5 times, but he'd only taken 6 shots. So then when you go look at his second half, and he doesn't take a shot until, I think, like he takes 1 shot in the third quarter, and he actually takes 5 shots last night. And so the first thing about Lauri that's interesting is he's just able to have a huge impact on very few shots. But it is noticeable last night that in the first quarter, he was particularly prominent. He took 5 shots. And the night before, we had the second half and then he takes 1 shot in the second quarter. And he takes 1 shot in the third quarter. And if you go back to when the year started, what I talked about, things I wanted to see from each player in their development and skill I didn't want to forget. The thing I wanted to see out of Lauri was I wanted to see 7 shot quarters. Like I wanted to see him really take a lot of shots in a quarter and be that guy. 7 shot quarters. He then, we saw it in the second half the other night also. So is this a trend? Well, interestingly, he's far better in first halves than second halves. But in regards to a trend like he doesn't get shots or doesn't do things, that's actually not a trend. So he shoots 55% in first halves and 52% in second halves. Both those numbers are incredible. He's only, in 24 games, he's taken 6 more shots and 5 more free throws in the first half. So nothing. Like that could go away. No trend there. He actually rebounds more in second halves. He has more turnovers by a large margin in first half. So he's probably more active, but it's dramatic. His three-point shooting in first halves is 44%, and his three-point shooting in second halves is 35%. Somebody's probably realized, oh, shoot, we shouldn't leave him. His three-point shooting right now is kind of otherworldly. He's in the month of November. Lauri Markkanen's numbers in the month of November are insane. He is shooting 55% from the field, 44% from 3, 82% from the line, and averaging 22 points a game. And about 8 or 9 rebounds. 55% from the field and 44% from 3 in the month of November is how he wrapped up the month of November. That's crazy. So he's just more efficient and better in first half shooting, but he's not actually absent, which I think is somewhat noteworthy. Late game watching. We do that as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. Fun little day for me, by the way. We have the Locked On family, the staff, in town here in Park City for the first time ever since the company was started in 2016 that we have our staff in the same place at the same time. Prior to today, or last night, we had never had more than 4 members of our company ever in the same place at the same time. And all of them are up in Deer Valley right now in a house, having a blast with a basketball court in the house, enjoying themselves immensely, hopefully. And then I'll bore them to death with some presentations about Locked On today. So I think you guys know, and I hope you're enjoying this because I sure am, is I've been doing late game watching. Ron and I usually do it together. But any game that's close late, we go grab the final 9 minutes because we want to watch all 10 players that play, or 9 players, and then review them. Last night was a little absent of close games. Cleveland blew out Philadelphia 113-85. Atlanta blew out Orlando. Boston, who has the best offense in the history of the NBA, beat Miami 134-121. Brooklyn and Washington. So New York and Milwaukee went down the wire. So I watched the end of that last night after I got home. Some interesting things on this one. There's a really interesting set that, Milwaukee doesn't run a lot of sets, but they're running a Holiday Giannis pick and roll on the right side of the floor with Brook Lopez, their center, in the right corner. So teams are trying to get to open side pick and rolls where there's no one in that corner. That's kind of the big thing everyone wants to get to in the game. But this one's interesting because if you put Lopez in that corner and Lopez is guarded by a center, then that center actually has to be out toward Lopez because he can bury the three, which then allows Holiday to come on the turn, and they have Giannis roll down the middle of the lane. Well, then you got to bring some guys over on Giannis because he's rolling the middle of the lane, and there's two shooters on the far side, and Holiday is big enough to hook that pass over the top. In this case, New York, Mitchell Robinson, worrying about Holiday's drive, came off Brook Lopez and just makes the short pass to the strong side corner. Like, number one rule in the NBA is never leave the strong side corner. So if you put Lopez in the strong side corner and you've got a center on him, then suddenly you never have a center in the middle. It's a really good set by Mike Budenholzer. It's a basic set, but it's really, really good. Knicks are running a neat little three-man weave with R.J. Barrett, Jalen Brunson, and Julius Randle out on the right side of the floor. It's like literally a three-man weave, and you'll hand off, and then you pick the guy you hand it off for or flip for, and it's got some neat little pitches in it instead of handoffs. And pitches are hard because if it's a pitch and the guys never come together, are you switching or you're not switching, it makes things really complicated. You know, if you do a pick and roll, everyone knows you're just switching. If you're doing a handoff, most people think you're switching, or at least you're hedging out. Well, if it's a toss, it gets right caught in between, and you're not entirely sure what's going to happen next. So they're doing some neat stuff with that. The biggest play of the game, because Giannis fouled out of the game, was a Grayson Allen three accelerated off a handoff from Lopez, taking advantage of that you're going to drop off Lopez, and Grayson hit the big shot. The other one the Bucks ran that was really neat late was the Bucks inbounded to Giannis. Grayson inbounds it, comes right back at Giannis, fakes the handoff. Giannis turns the corner, and then Giannis catches it like the elbow of the free throw line, a little higher, top of the key, call it. Fakes the handoff, and Giannis turns with a left-hand dribble, and Holiday comes by, and he gets the handoff, and now there's nobody in that corner, so Giannis is rolling on an open side, and Holiday's coming in the middle of the lane. That's another one that's tough to guard. Milwaukee's got some little actions that get really, really hard to guard. And Milwaukee wins that one 109-103. Memphis played Minnesota. I am utterly convinced Minnesota's going to be better without Karl Anthony Towns. I thought that the case. Now that I've watched them, they looked much, much better. Anthony Edwards was amazing last night. He actually hit Rudy Gobert for an alley-oop. They're playing Kyle Anderson late, who wins games. He just plays right. Minnesota's doing stuff where they try to do stuff with Rudy up top on these handoffs. It's all a waste of time. Just play him in the pick and roll. Like, just play him in the pick and roll. What are you doing? But they beat Memphis last night. Memphis really misses Desmond Bane because when Ja Morant drives and kicks it out to Dillon Brooks, it's a disaster because he can't shoot. He's just such an inefficient player. I mean, he talks trash and gets in fights and everyone loves him and all that stuff, but he's just not actually that good. So he doesn't actually make shots, which is super important in this league. And so it's a real problem when Ja Morant drives and then kicks back and Dillon Brooks is there instead of Desmond Bane for them. And they just don't have enough other guys to close it. Roddy's playing okay, but I don't think they want to close with him. And so they fell short last night. They just felt like they were missing. Memphis felt like they were just short a piece last night. Watching that piece is probably Desmond Bane. Rudy got one rebound in 26 minutes last night. Rudy only played 26 minutes last night. I'm telling you, I like Minnesota a lot more without Cat. Also because I love Jalen Noel, who's playing. I actually think Austin Rivers is playing pretty well for them. They started a kid named Wendell Moore, but I didn't see him because the 8 minutes I watched, he wasn't on the floor. And they're playing Kyle Anderson 40 minutes, who wins games. Keep an eye on it. They're 11-11, maybe 12-11 after the win last night. I think Minnesota will have a good 6 weeks. I then went back and watched the Dallas Golden State game because I was planning to watch it the night before from yesterday and didn't get to because I had to watch the end of the Clippers-Portland game to get ready for the broadcast because I went to bed thinking the Clippers had lost that game. This was one of the great basketball games of the season. It is fascinating to me. Everyone is doubling Luka, and he is getting off for a guy who has 41 points, 12 rebounds, and 12 assists, he gets off the ball so willingly and makes the right passes, and then they get wide open threes out of it. They're taking 50% of their shots as threes. And I guess you just have to decide you don't believe that Reggie Bullock and Christian Wood and Spencer Dinwiddie are going to make threes, and that's what the Warriors did, and they didn't, and those guys went a combined 0 for 12, and the Warriors lost. Like, that's crazy. Josh Green made some big plays, and Josh Green on a decoy came off a high pick and roll and drove to the basket, which is a skill set we had not seen out of the Australian, out of the University of Arizona, former first-round pick. So that was a big step. This was also a game where Doncic was guarding Curry. He actually, I thought, did a half-decent job. The Warriors were going to get Doncic every time, and the Dallas was going to get Curry every single time. What else did I have? Doncic had a beautiful steal and fast break and rose for a 3 in transition. I guess they called it a 2, but it was just an incredible play. And then, the Warriors have their choice. Wiggins guards Doncic late, which is a pretty nice luxury. Dallas wins this game. Dallas has been funky, largely because Tim Hardaway, to me, is so inefficient, and Christian Wood's kind of unclear what he's going to be on a given night. And so they added these two pieces this year that just make them, honestly, I don't know if I think they make them better. And then for them to get this win is a big deal, is a really big deal, because that's a good one from them. Dallas is 10-10. Minnesota's 11-11. Warriors are 11-11. Portland's 11-11. Portland has lost 8 of 10. Oklahoma City's 9-13. Lakers are 8-12 now, having won a few in a row. We'll see. It's interesting. It feels as though right now it's going to come down to the Jazz or Portland for that 10th spot in the Western Conference to get into that playing game. All right, that is Locked on Jazz. Thanks very much for tuning in. Appreciate you very much. Thanks again to all those Spotify Wrapped people. And please send them my way. It makes my day. I'm not lying. I'm just going to admit it. Like, I did a class the other day at BYU, and someone said, how do you deal with public criticism and stuff like that? And I was like, not well. Pisses me off. So I will openly admit, if I'm going to admit that, I'll admit the other side, that seeing that someone has dedicated, X amount of hours to listening to this show just warms my heart, and I appreciate it more than anything in the world. Have a great one. Thanks very much. Talk to you soon.